The first thing I did after being reborn was to replace the sugar pills in the rat poison box with the real thing. In my previous life, my father was diagnosed with a terminal illness. To treat him, we spent all our savings and even took on massive debts. My father said he didn't want to burden my mother and me, so he divorced my mother and took rat poison to commit suicide, but the debt collectors still broke into our home. They seized our house, dragged away my father's body, and my mother was left with a broken leg. From then on, I spent my entire life paying off my father's debts, while my mother fell ill, unable to afford treatment until the end. In extreme poverty, I chose to end my life, only to discover after death, my father hadn't died at all. He faked his illness as an excuse, took all the family's savings, and went abroad with his mistress to live a carefree life. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day when my father was planning to fake his death. Summer, it's Dad's fault for letting you and Mom down. With this illness, I don't have much time left. Ask Mom to sign the divorce agreement. I'll take the debts with me, and you and Mom can still have a good life. I looked at the divorce agreement being handed to me, while Mom was already beside me, crying her eyes out. In my previous life, he did the same thing, divorcing under the guise of doing it for the sake of me and Mom, and dividing the property. In reality, the divorce agreement stipulated that all the debts would be borne by my mother. After he poisoned himself to death, debt collectors came to our door every day, smashing it, splashing paint, threatening, and beating us. Mom's leg was broken, my life was ruined, and in the end, we couldn't even keep the house. Mom, don't sign it. I snatched the divorce agreement and tore it to shreds. If it can't be cured, we'll sell the house. If we don't have enough money, I'll borrow it. I won't go to school, I'll go to work, but I will never sign this. Even if I die, we'll be together as a family. I spoke with sincerity. Dad's mouth twitched, unsure if it was out of emotion or calculation. Nonsense, this is dragging you down. He suddenly stepped back and grabbed the rat poison by the table. When I'm dead, the debt is gone. By then, if the creditors come, just give them my corpse. It should be enough to keep your mother safe for 2 weeks. After saying that, he tilted his head back to take the medicine. Honey, no, Mom cried out and rushed over, just like in my previous life, to snatch the medicine, but this time, I was faster than anyone. Clang, I kicked the table over with a single motion. The medicine box flew out, and brown pills scattered across the floor. As a joke, the medicine inside hasn't been replaced yet. How could my dear father die now? I quickly dropped to my knees, scooping up every last pill before my father could. Dad, if you're sick, we'll treat it. I'll figure out the money. We can't give up on your life. I absolutely won't let you die. Raising my eyes, I was already in tears. Seeing my expression, my father collapsed weakly to the ground. My mother rushed to his side. Honey, don't do anything foolish. Even if it's terminal, your wife and child will be with you. Accompany? How can I accompany you? He pushed his mother away, beating his chest and stomaching. There's not a single cent left in the house. I'm just a useless person waiting to die. What will you do after I'm gone? Dad, I have money. I ran back to my bedroom and took out a bank card. Dad looked anxious. You really want to give this to me? How can that be? This is what your grandparents gave you. He said that, but his hand was already reaching out. I sneered inwardly. Wasn't this exactly what he wanted? There's over 300,000 in here, all part of the dowry my grandparents left me after they passed away. In my previous life, I had planned to use the money in this card to help my mom turn things around, but later found out it was already gone, probably stolen by him in that life. Instead of waiting for him to steal it, I might as well play a bigger game myself. I gave it to him directly. You're my father, we're a family. Father went through the motions of refusing, but eventually accepted it. Seeing his rosy cheeks, there wasn't a trace of illness. My heart was already as cold as ice. He took out his phone and sent a reply to a text message while we weren't paying attention. The plan has changed. Another day. Seeing that text message, I sneered inwardly. In my previous life, after my father's death, the debt collectors quickly came to his door, took away his dead body, and sent it abroad. He not only took all the money from home but also took out a large loan using my identity. He squeezed every last bit from my mother and me. My mother and I, with her crippled leg, had nowhere to go in the cold wind, and we eventually died in misery. Fortunately, heaven gave me a second chance. Dad, since you're so eager to die, this lifetime, I'll make sure you're dead for good. Sure enough, as soon as Dad got the card, he couldn't sit still. Sarah, can you tell me the password? This money. I need to pay off some urgent debts first. or they'll keep coming to my door every day. Dad, I'll go with you. With your health like this, I don't feel at ease." After hesitating for a long time, he reluctantly nodded. Bank. I watched him happily holding 300,000, ready to deposit it into his own card. The counter screen flickered, and a figure jumped out in the balance column of his card, over 600,000. Adding this 30. "There are over 900,000 in this card," I gasped sharply. "Dad, didn't we run out of money ages ago?" He shuddered all over and stammered, This isn't our money, it's just a temporary loan to pay off debts. I can't leave you with a mountain of debt after I'm gone, can I?" Watching his frantic attempts to cover up, a cold, mocking smile spread across my heart. Paying off debts. More like the funds for him and his mistress to live it up together. He still had 6 such cards. But currently only this one was with him, the rest were with the mistress. In his previous life, he also guarded against the mistress, with one person keeping the card and the other keeping the password. I secretly memorized the password to his savings. After leaving the bank, on the way home, Dad furtively took out his phone. I walked beside him, casually glancing at his phone screen. There was a text message, "It's time to act." I took it all in and took out my phone, sending a message. I brought him home, but before we even reached the house, we could hear the commotion inside. My heart sank. Were the debt collectors already here so soon? Before I could react, a shrill female voice rang out from inside the house. "Oh, old Chen's back. We all saw your daughter's post on WeChat. Heard you're planning to pay up." Dad froze in place, unsure whether to enter or leave. Old Chen. "You owe me 50,000 that you borrowed earlier, right?" My dad was dragged into the house by a group of people, and my 30,000, my 28,000, the whole room was filled with people, all clamoring, all here to collect debts. Dad's face alternated between red and pale as he looked at me in surprise. "You posted on Moments, for debt repayment." I took a step forward. "Uncles, aunts, please rest assured, the money my dad owes will definitely be repaid." Mom tugged at my sleeve and whispered, "Where do we have any money left? Today's grocery money was borrowed from a neighbor." I pretended not to hear and deliberately raised my voice. My dad went to great lengths to prepare over 600,000 yuan, just to settle everyone's debts before he left, so as not to burden my mother and me. The room instantly erupted in commotion. "Really? Over 600,000 yuan? Oh. I knew it. Lao Chen isn't the type to default on his debts. This is called having a conscience." Dad's hand was trembling, frantically signaling to me. I pretended not to notice and grabbed his hand. "Dad, all the relatives are here now, and you've prepared the money, right? Since everyone's here, let's just settle the debt. You wouldn't want to leave with that debt hanging over you, would you?" Seeing his frustrated expression, I felt a secret thrill. The money I had just gotten my hands on, still warm, had to be given back. In my previous life, after my father fell ill, our relatives didn't hesitate to lend a hand. After my father passed away, although no one pressured us, the sense of obligation faded, and we were gradually pushed to the margins. Later, my mother and I struggled to make ends meet, and even though we wanted to ask for their help, we couldn't bring ourselves to do it. This time, I'll make him cough up 300,000 first. Dad opened his mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. I continued for him. My dad said, "If this isn't enough, we'll sell the house. We absolutely won't let anyone suffer a loss." He was put on the spot, caught between a rock and a hard place. In the end, with a livid face, he began transferring money one transaction at a time amidst the relatives' praises. "Old Chen is really something. After you're gone, I'll definitely take care of your mother and child. The child is also filial. It wasn't in vain. Sister-in-law, you've also worked hard." Once the relatives got the money, their attitudes immediately did a 180, showering with kind words. Dad forced a smile, playing the part of a devoted man. "If I leave, please take care of them, mother and child, for me." At that moment, a relative scrutinized him. "Hey, old Chen, your complexion looks pretty good, huh? It really doesn't seem like." Before he could finish, I directly pulled out the diagnosis report I had prepared in advance and showed it to everyone. My voice choked. The doctor said, "Not many days left. My dad's good complexion, it's just a temporary improvement before the end." A wave of sighs filled the room. I raised my glass and toasted everyone. "Thank you all for coming today. When my father really passes away, we orphans and widows will still need everyone's support." The relatives chimed in, making all sorts of promises. Just as this warm moment unfolded, the front door was violently pounded. Bang, bang, bang. The violent pounding on the door echoed loudly. From outside came a fierce roar. Bruce, open up, pay up. The person my dad owed money to had arrived. As soon as the door opened, 7 or 8 burly men blocked the entrance, their expressions unfriendly. Bruce, today is your final deadline. You must repay the debt, or else. The leader's words trailed off as he suddenly noticed the full house, and he froze. The relatives, having just received their money, were now on our side and immediately swarmed around, each voicing their opinions. Which company are you from? Coming to collect debts at home? How much is owed? Show me the evidence. The burly leader didn't get angry. He pulled out a stack of documents, black and white. 3 million. Hearing this, everyone turned to look at Dad. 3 million. Mom looked even more shocked. We were already in a lot of debt. Why did you borrow more? Dad lowered his head. I'm sorry, dear. I didn't dare tell you. Later, the treatment costs kept rising, and we had no money at home. I wanted to stay alive, so I had to. The burly man added another line, and it was under your wife's name, Susan, that the loan was taken. What? My mother's face turned green, and the surrounding relatives looked shocked at my father, using his wife's name to take out a loan. Is he even a man? Dad's face turned pale, and he shrank back. Susan, I'm sorry, I'm a cancer patient, I can't get a loan. The family really can't hold on any longer. Mom's body swayed violently and she almost lost her balance. I quickly steadied her and glared at the group. My mom had no idea. This money doesn't count, little brat. What right do you have to speak? A burly man stepped forward to push me. What are you doing? Several uncles immediately stood in front of me, and the tension in the room instantly tightened. The debt collector sneered coldly. Paying debts is a matter of course. If you don't pay today, don't blame us for being impolite. Mother wept bitterly, turning to plead with relatives. Please, lend us a little, just to tide us over. Who would be willing to part with money they've just received, especially when it's to help someone who is on the verge of death? The room fell silent. At that moment, Dad's gaze suddenly fixed on the bottle of rat poison on the cabinet, stealthily moving closer when no one was looking. He swiftly grabbed the jar and raised it high. Susan, Sarah, it's Dad's fault. Old Chin, don't do anything foolish. Dad, nobody come closer. In the midst of the crowd's exclamations, he shouted at the debt collectors. Listen up, a dead man's debts are cancelled. Don't push me. The debt collectors scoffed. Who are you trying to scare? The crowd was getting into the act. My dad suddenly twisted off the cap and took a big gulp. Dad. Old Chen, the bottle clattered to the ground. Everyone was stunned. He staggered 2 steps, clutching his neck, his eyes rolling back, his body convulsing violently. Thud, he fell straight to the ground. Everyone was stunned. Mom let out a scream and fainted. Even the burly debt collectors were taken aback, whispering to each other, This is too real, isn't it? His eyes are rolled back. It's no wonder it looks like it. Never expected, right? Real medicine, murder, quick, call an ambulance, hurry, 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 Old Chen. Don't you die on us, no breath, Old Chen, Old Chen. I also rushed to my father's side, crying and shaking him. Dad, Dad, don't scare me like this. During the chaos, my hand swiftly reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved the bank card. Even if the person is dead, the debt must be settled. The leader of the debt collectors snapped into action, determined to see the act through. He spoke sharply. We need to take the body. We must see the living or the dead. Do you still have any humanity left? What kind of skill is it to bully orphans and widows? The relatives were all enraged, blocking the way, and in the pushing and shoving, they actually started to fight. I stood up and walked in front of the group. Which company are you from? What is the interest rate? Is the contract compliant? Show me the evidence. Enough nonsense. It's written in black and white. I stared into their eyes. Then I'll call the police. Let them investigate. Check your qualifications, your interest rates, and how this debt even came about. You dare. You'll see if I dare. My dad is already dead. I'm not afraid of dying. I turned back to a cousin and said, Brother, call the police. Those few exchanged glances but completely ignored me. They walked straight toward my father's body, intending to drag it away. I grabbed a fruit knife from the table. I'd like to see who dares to touch my father. Little girl, you still dare to stab someone, huh? Perfect. One more charge won't hurt. I switched the fruit knife to the other side, holding it horizontally in front of me. All these people are my relatives. I'll say you stabbed me. Now my dad is dead. If I die too, I'll make sure you all go to jail together, you little brat. Although my father is dead, the house is still here. We will sell the house and repay the debt, but you will not take him away today. Call the police." I raised my voice. Fine, fine, you're ruthless." The leader of the debt collectors gritted his teeth and put away the documents. "We're leaving, but this debt is not settled." A few people rushed out the door and disappeared into the hallway. The room was deathly silent, except for my mother's muffled sobs. Sarah, one of the aunts, came over. Her eyes red. What do we do now?" I looked at my father on the ground and said calmly, "It's better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Let's cremate him as soon as possible." At the mention of the word cremation, Dad's fingers visibly trembled. He drank real rat poison, and if taken to the hospital now, he might still have a faint chance of survival. I crouched down and firmly pressed down on the hand that had trembled. "Dad, may you rest in peace." After the doctor issued the death notification, everything proceeded at lightning speed. Seeing the suspicious figures lurking near the hospital entrance, I let out a cold laugh. They still won't give up, trying to find another chance to sneak my dad out. Unfortunately, this time, I handled all the procedures myself, watching the crematory furnace blaze with intense flames. The father who lived a carefree life abroad in his previous life is now lying inside. I exhale a breath. Not over yet, not enough. Out of my dad's 6 cards, I only have 1 in my hand now. The rest are all in the hands of his mistress. So much money, how can I let that cheap woman get away with it? At my dad's memorial service, most of the relatives came that day, many bringing friends along. My father's act of debt forgiven upon death became the biggest gossip among them. Everyone knew how difficult it was for my mother and me, burdened with debt, so the condolence money they gave was significantly more than usual. Even distant relatives who rarely contacted us sent their regards through others. In my previous life, we didn't receive such treatment. In just one day, I had over 300,000 more in my pocket. I now have the card my father used to withdraw money yesterday, and after repaying my relatives' debts, I still have over 100,000 left. At this moment, a piercing wail echoed outside the morning hall. "My son, how could you leave before your mother?" A black-haired person mourning a white-haired one. "My grandmother has arrived, and behind her is a young woman with a slightly protruding belly. It's the other woman." Before I could even look for her, she came right to me. That makes sense. With all those passwordless bank cards in her possession, she had nowhere to spend the money. Right, this woman was quite cunning, knowing she had no standing to demand money. She brought my grandmother along to do it. In my previous life, when my father was seriously ill, my grandmother used the excuse of having no money and never contributed a single cent. After my father's death, she disappeared without a trace, completely ignoring us mother and daughter. Today, my grandmother strutted right up to the door, shouting loudly even before entering the morning hall, "Give me back my son's body. I need to take him back to the ancestral grave for a proper burial." I stood in the doorway, not budging an inch. "Quiet down. This is not your home. Why can't I come? He's my son." Grandma glared at me. The relatives nearby couldn't stand it and began to speak up. "Auntie Chen, I'm not saying this to criticize, but you didn't take care of your son when he was sick either." "Exactly. Now they're in debt up to their necks, and the mother and daughter are struggling so much. If you take the body away, who will the creditors go after?" Grandma was left embarrassed by the comments. I directly extended my hand towards her. "Palm up, Grandma. Are you here to repay my dad's debts? He owes quite a bit, so I'll thank you in advance." "You?" Grandma was at a loss for words, pulling the woman to force her way in. "I'm going to see my son first." I stretched out my arm to block again, patting the morning book in my hand. Grandma was a bit angry. "What, do I have to pay to see my own son? How many times did my dad borrow money from you before he passed away? You never gave a penny. Now look at you, decked out in gold and silver, and look at me and my mom, burdened with millions in debt. As a grandmother, is this appropriate?" The surrounding gazes were like needles, and Grandma's face alternated between red and white. She angrily pulled out 200 yuan from her bag and slapped it down on the registration table. The expressions of me and the surrounding relatives immediately turned contemptuous. Feeling uncomfortable under the scrutiny, she reluctantly added 800 more. I counted the incoming funds, handed back the gifts, and offered 3 sticks of incense. She pulled the woman in again. I extended my arm once more. "What about her?" Grandma glanced at the woman, her expression becoming uneasy. She's your father's adopted sister." "My companion, adopted sister, never heard of her," I retorted, unyielding. "The condolence money is separate." "You?" Grandma was trembling with anger, but seeing the relatives watching the scene, she didn't want to make a big deal out of it. How could she bring up the woman's identity in public? she reluctantly counted out another 1,000 and threw it over. The two entered the morning hall and knelt down to pay their respects. The woman suddenly lost control of her emotions and wailed, "You're just leaving like this? How am I supposed to live my life now, you heartless man?" As she cried out, she reached out to lift the coffin lid. "What are you doing?" Several relatives quickly grabbed her and pulled her away. I stared at my grandmother. "Who exactly is she?" Grandma stuttered, unable to speak. The woman wiped away her tears and stood up herself. "My name is Mia, according to the old customs. You have to call me little mother, little mother." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone fell silent. She continued without regard, speaking her mind. "Your father and I grew up together, childhood sweethearts with a prearranged marriage. It was only after I returned from studying abroad that I discovered he was already married. However, your father and I have always loved each other, so we never broke it off." What a passionate confession, making the other woman sound so justified. Mother's face turned ashen, and she looked at Grandma. "Mom, you knew about this?" Grandma averted her gaze, unable to look directly at her. Mia spoke first, her face showing a demeanor of knowledge and propriety, full of feeling. "Sister, I never intended to disrupt your life, nor do I want to. I'm here today just to pay my respects. Finally, I want to take Chin-Ji's body with me, in the future. I want to be buried together with him. I beg you, sister, to grant me this wish." My mother almost fainted from anger. Relatives also found it bizarre, and harsh words came one after another. "What do you mean, big or small? Get out of here right now." I pointed to the door, urging the two to leave immediately. Mia had a stubborn look on her face. "I don't want money, I just want the body. Get out." Grandma grabbed me. "Sarah, she's still your elder after all." "Elder, she's just a concubine." I shook off Grandma's hand. "In ancient times, as the legitimate daughter. Selling her off wouldn't even raise an eyebrow." "Get out." Everyone also chimed in to scold. Mia suddenly knelt down with a loud thud and kowtowed to me. "I know coming here now is quite an intrusion, but please let me see your father. I've contributed tens of thousands for his treatment." "Oh, evidence. She's got the acting bug, so I'll play along. My dad owes millions in debt, and I don't even know where the money went. Now that I see you, I get it. I haven't come to collect the debt. Yet here you are, showing up at my door. Want to see my dad? Not a chance." Mia suddenly looked up and shouted, "I'm pregnant with your dad's child." I checked. "It's a boy. I don't have the right to ask for anything, but the child has the right to see his father, doesn't he?" The room suddenly fell silent, all eyes focusing on her slightly protruding belly. "This woman is really shameless." I laughed out loud. "Ha ha ha, who doesn't know? My dad has been sick for half a year with liver cancer. The doctor said, given his condition, he was long gone." "You said, how did this child come to be?" The surrounding discussions erupted, and Mia's face turned crimson in an instant. "In fact, my father's illness was faked, and the inability to have children was something I made up. I just can't stand to see them happy." I turned to my grandmother. "Grandma, do you really believe such lies, or is it that you just want a grandson?" "No matter whose it is." Grandma was speechless, her eyes flustered. Mia was desperate. She didn't even care about her dignity anymore, throwing a tantrum in public. How could she leave empty-handed? "You don't believe me? You can do a paternity test. If the child really is his, I just want the clothes your father wore on the day he passed away. They were a gift from me, something to remember him by." Is that too much to ask? It sounded pitiful, full of deep affection. But I know which piece of clothing she's referring to. Yesterday, while sorting through his belongings, I found a small notebook inside that very garment. The notebook contained the passwords for various cards. What she wanted wasn't the clothes, but the password. It was the money. I slowly shook my head. "I'm afraid that's not possible." Grandma got anxious. "Why? She's not asking for money. Can't you even give her a piece of clothing?" The surrounding relatives began to murmur among themselves, as if giving a piece of clothing wasn't such an unforgivable act. Just as everyone thought I would take pity and fetch the clothing, I turned sideways and pointed to the black jar behind the portrait. "It's not that I won't give the clothing." I innocently shrugged my shoulders. "I mean, my dad can't do a paternity test now, and I burned the clothes too." The two followed my finger and their gazes froze on the urn. You burned your dad." Both legs went weak, nearly causing them to collapse to the ground. How could you burn your father? He was still." Before Mia could finish her sentence, she abruptly stopped herself. "What? Still alive, right?" I sneered coldly in my heart, but my face was full of anger as I glared at my grandmother. "Grandma, Is my father even your biological son? When he was alive, you wouldn't give him a penny, but now that he's dead, you have the nerve to bring this little tramp you found somewhere to our door." Turning my head, I pointed at Mia. "And you? What right do you have to see my father? Do you think you can use the illegitimate child in your belly to blackmail me? I now suspect that all those loans my father took out were because of you. I will definitely go through legal procedures to audit your accounts. Everything you owe our family, you will pay back in full." The relatives were influenced by my emotions and stepped forward to support me. "Auntie Chen, you've really gone too far with this." "Exactly. You didn't care when the son was alive. But now you come to make trouble after he's dead. How could you bring such a person here? Isn't this just stabbing Susan and Sarah in the heart?" Grandma was criticized by everyone and kept retreating, but Mia still wouldn't give up and grabbed my mother. Sister Pei, I beg you, it's my fault. The clothes, before you burned them, did you really not see anything else, like a notebook? Not very big." I yanked my mother behind me, shielding her in front of me. "Haven't seen, don't know. Get lost." Before Mia could say anything more, Grandma pulled her away. The ceremony ended, but my mother was still holding the urn, lost in thought. I walked over. "Mom, let it go. This isn't my father." My mother looked stunned. "Sarah, what are you saying? This man doesn't deserve to be my father, and even less to be your husband." I recounted to my mother, one by one, the events of my previous life. My mother's expression changed from initial shock to intense anger, and finally, she smashed the urn in her hands to pieces. "So your grandmother, and that woman, came to cause a scene at the morning hall today, not for your father, right? Why would they want any clothes?" I took over the conversation, pulling out the small leather notebook from my pocket. "They were looking for this. Dad's money was split in half, stuck with Mia, and the password was originally supposed to be with Dad. They need to get both together to empty the money, but now, the password is with me." I shook the notebook in my hand and then handed it to my mom. "Mom, you and Dad are still legally married. You have the right to audit all his accounts and reclaim the marital property that belongs to both of you. We can use this password to retrieve the card from Mia. This time, this money, can only be ours." My mom nodded, her eyes gradually growing firm. "Mom understands. My Sarah has grown up." She reached out and hugged me tightly. "Leave the rest to Mom. This life, I'll take you, and we'll live well." I believe Mia and Grandma won't let such a large sum of money go untouched. I just need to wait for them to crack. I contacted a lawyer, who said that as long as the marital relationship is intact, my mother has the right to apply for the freezing and recovery of all assets under my father's name. At the same time, the sale information for our house was quietly posted on a real estate agency platform. I was preparing everything methodically, and Mia was indeed starting to get restless. She first came to my school to look for me in secret. She dressed simply, lamenting her misfortune and telling me how my grandmother was now being harsh and difficult towards her. "Sarah." She tugged at my sleeve. "I know I've wronged your family, but look at me now. I'm really at my wit's end. Could you possibly return the money I gave your father? I have the transfer records." I watched her take out her phone, pretending to be confused. "Auntie Lynn, I really can't understand, as a returnee, how you could have fallen for my dad. Besides, don't you know our current situation? We're drowning in debt, and the house is about to be sold. Where would we get the money to give you?" "No, it's not that. Your father." "My father what?" I turned my head and looked at her. She immediately clamped her mouth shut, realizing she had almost let something slip. She frowned and turned to leave. Seeing her frustrated yet unable to vent, I barely managed to stifle a laugh. I put on a troubled expression and muttered behind her, "Auntie, it's not that I don't want to help you. Our house is about to be sold, and no one has been staying there these days. We'll see how things go after we get the money from the sale." Mia's eyes lit up, and she turned away absent-mindedly. I signed my mom up for a short trip to a nearby province, visiting a famous ancient town known for its mountains and waters. Walking on the cobblestone path, seeing the gradual relaxation on my mom's face, I vaguely remembered, at this time in my previous life, we were being cornered at home by those debt collectors, smashing the door and cursing, living in constant fear. In this life, those debt collectors, seeing that they couldn't rescue my dad, never came back. It makes sense. After all, my dad really died, and they were paid actors, so it's better to avoid unnecessary trouble. The way I acted like a shrew with a knife that day also made them realize that I'm not someone to be trifled with. Just as I was thinking, my phone suddenly started vibrating continuously. With notifications from the home surveillance system, I quickly opened the app and couldn't help but smile. Mia took the bait. I handed the phone to my mom. Mom, no need for a lawsuit. Someone's giving us money. In the surveillance footage, Grandma was digging around in front of the TV cabinet, while Mia flipped over all the sofa cushions. Grandma flipped through the pages, her voice low and urgent as she cursed. Hurry up. Look carefully, that dead girl must have hidden it. If we can't find the password book, that money will never be withdrawn. Mia's movements were rough, her face full of anxiety. This is all your son's fault. I said to open an account with my identity. He absolutely refused. Now look, he's dead. If they find out about this money, it'll end up in their accounts. How are we supposed to take it back from them? Grandma is also very anxious. Impossible. You said they wouldn't come back to this house. They must be hiding from debt collectors and don't know about this money. Keep looking. Drawer compartments, behind the picture frames, the ceiling, look everywhere. Seeing the two figures on the screen, I directly dialed 911. Hello, 911, I need to report a break-in at my home. Someone is committing theft. Yes, the address is in the police station. Grandma stubbornly refused to admit her guilt, spitting even on the face of the police officer opposite her. That's my son's home. I'm going to my son's home. It's only right. What are you arresting me for? Let me out now. The young police officer in charge of mediation tapped the dispatch record on the table. Mrs. Chen, then explain this to me. Why did you break the lock? What's wrong with picking the lock? I forgot my keys. Grandma's eyes widened, defiant and unreasonable. My son just left. I'm distraught. Isn't it normal to forget my keys? The police officer was getting a headache from her nonsense. Just then, the door to the mediation room opened, and my mother and I entered, accompanied by Lawyer Leo. Grandma spotted us immediately, grabbing onto us like a lifeline. Susan, Sarah, you're just in time. Quickly explain to the police officers that this is all a misunderstanding. We're all family here. What's with all this talk of stealing? It's so unpleasant. Tell them to let me go. I didn't respond to her. Instead, turning to the lawyer beside me, Mr. Leo, thank you for your hard work. Mr. Leo nodded and took out a thick stack of documents. Officer, first, we need to clarify a few points. 1. The residence in question is registered under the name of my client, Ms. Susan, and is her personal property acquired before marriage, unrelated to Mr. Bruce or his mother, Mrs. Chen. Therefore, the so-called son's home, as mentioned by Mrs. Chen, does not exist. Hearing this, my grandmother's face changed. What premarital property? That's the house my son lives in after getting married. Lawyer Leo ignored her and continued. Second, the illegal intrusion into the residence is already a fact. However, what makes this case even more serious is that after my client's inventory, it was discovered that valuable property stored in the home is missing, with an initial estimate of over 8 million RMB. We reasonably suspect that it was these two intruders who committed the theft, over 8 million. Grandma and Mia exchanged a glance, then pointed at my mother and me, shouting curses. Your family is so poor, you can't even pay off your debts. Where on earth did you get 8 million, you crazy girl, obsessed with money, trying to extort me? I looked at them, my voice calm. Before my father passed away, he secretly saved some money to secure a future for my mother and me. He set up 7 or 8 large deposit certificates and bank cards. This, even my mother didn't know about. Mia's expression changed in surprise. I calmly took out a piece of paper, clearly listing several account numbers. Then Lawyer Leo took out a stack of documents. These are indeed the accounts of Bruce before his death. Mia also saw the cards on the paper. How could this be? You. She must be eager to ask me how I know about these cards. I meet her gaze. I suspect this woman took them. She had an improper relationship with my father before he died. I demand to check her personal belongings. I suspect our family's cards are on her. You're lying, Mia screamed, clutching the bag tightly to her chest. This is my bag. What right do you have to check it? The police had already stood up and were walking towards Mia. Ma'am, please cooperate with the inspection. Mia tried to resist, but the bag had already been opened. Inside, besides cosmetics and tissues, there were several bank cards lying clearly. Mia was still struggling. These are my cards. Mine. What right do you have to say they're your father's? The female police officer compared the numbers on the cards. These ones, they are the ones you lost. This is theft. I didn't steal. Mia's lips trembled. I looked at her, waiting for her to say that sentence, when suddenly my grandmother interjected. What's the matter? That was a gift from my son out of filial piety. I've been using it all along. I just lent it to Mia for now. officer, I ask you, is it wrong for a son to be filial to his mother? I never expected that my grandmother would take all of this upon herself, shielding the mistress for the sake of money. What place does she have for me and my mother? I stepped forward, my eyes fixed firmly on my grandmother. Grandma, I'm asking you one last time. Are you sure it was my father who gave it to you, not stolen? Grandma insisted firmly. Her expression filled with disdain for me. Of course, let me tell you, stop spreading rumors here for no reason, you'll face retribution. Okay, I had my lawyer present a bill, and Lawyer Leo's voice was clear and resonant. September 11th, purchased a set of lipstick. Grandma straightened her back, her expression bold and assertive. What, even though I'm older, can't I love beauty? October 13th, purchased a size S bikini set. The crowd's eyes wandered over Grandma's plump, overweight figure, and Grandma slightly retracted her straightened back. So what? Isn't it reasonable for me to swim? What I wear is none of your business. November 21st, purchased a box of condoms and a set of black erotic lingerie. November 21st, spent at an adult hotel. Grandma's face turned completely red, and she roared out loud, I have my personal preferences. What's the problem? Who gave you the right to read my personal expenses in public? I may be old, but I still have the right to privacy. I laughed and clapped my hands. All right, Grandma, I won't pursue your extravagant hobbies for now, but this card, I'm taking it. After all these years, you haven't given us a single cent. Since Dad is dead, my mom and I are the primary heirs. Do you have any objections? You insolent girl, what are you talking about? That money is mine. Do you have any right to speak? Seeing that Grandma and I were at a stalemate, Mia finally exploded. What are you arguing about? I haven't even spoken yet. Why should it be like this? That's my card. It was given to me by Bruce. I've been using it for 3 years. Why should it be divided among you? The mediation room fell silent for a moment. I looked at her, a slow smile curving my lips as I turned to Lawyer Leo. Lawyer Leo, you've heard it all. She admitted herself that over the past 3 years, she has been using the joint marital property of my parents, which is under my father's name. Lawyer Leo nodded and immediately responded, his tone firm and decisive. According to relevant regulations, during the existence of a marital relationship, any large-value joint marital property donated to a third party without the consent of the other spouse is invalid. The third party should return the property. Comrade Police, this is not only suspected of illegal trespass and theft, but also involves the illegal occupation of a large amount of joint marital property. My client demands that legal responsibility be pursued in accordance with the law and that all illegally occupied funds and corresponding interest be recovered. I didn't. Mia was completely panicked, her words jumbled, and she looked to her grandmother for help. Grandma, frustrated that her son wasn't living up to expectations, shouted angrily, Stupid pig, I bit him to death. It's mine. What can they do about it? Why did you admit it yourself? She never expected things to escalate to this point, nor did she anticipate that Mia, this fool, would admit it herself. She wanted to curse, to throw a tantrum, but looking at the police in front of her, she knew all her tricks were useless now. When we left the police station, it was already late. The night breeze carried a chill, and Mom held my hand tightly. Are all of them really with her? Mother asked softly, her tone complex. Most of them, I replied, at least. The most important ones have been retrieved. As for whether Father has other hidden accounts, that's something to be slowly unearthed in the subsequent legal proceedings. The act of burglary is a fact. Upon being released after over 10 days in custody, Grandma and Mia immediately turned on each other like dogs fighting over a bone. Grandma called Mia a stupid donkey, to which Mia retorted by calling Grandma an old venomous woman, in the midst of their heated argument and shoving. Mia's unborn child could not be saved. Some time later, Grandma and Mia, along with that group of fake debt collectors, actually showed up at my doorstep, smashing the door, shouting curses, and throwing paint. After waiting for a long time, a few burly men with tattoos on their arms came out. Who are you guys? The two were startled, and Mia quickly checked the door number. It's correct. This is the place. Isn't there a mother and daughter living here? This house is mine now. What's your problem? The burly man roared impatiently. Grandma and Mia exchanged a glance. Then I'm sorry, we must have the wrong place. Wait, you want to leave? Big brother, I was wrong, big brother. They first spent a few days in the police station, then a few days in the hospital, yet they still wanted to find me, but their reputation among relatives had already gone bad. No one wanted to help them. Meanwhile, my mom and I were already enjoying a vacation on a faraway island. The proceeds from selling the house, combined with the recovered assets of my father, have already exceeded 8 figures in the account, allowing us to live comfortably just by lying down. Each year, I took my mother on trips around the world. Living a life of abundance. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. On the eve of the wedding, my fiancé suddenly announced that the wedding was off, only because he received news that the fake heiress, who had been demoted to a rural machinery branch factory, had been violated by a gangster and became pregnant. She's frail and can't withstand an abortion. If I don't marry her, how will she survive? In my previous life, I insisted on getting married, and on the third day, news came that the fake heiress had drowned herself. He casually said it was because she was too fragile, yet after leveraging my family's support to become the new factory director, he forged a letter accusing me of leaking the factory's core technology abroad, before he could personally lead me to the public denunciation platform. 7 months pregnant. Dragged him down with me, but by then, my family had already been tainted by my actions, and there was no turning back. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day when my fiancé said he wanted to call off the wedding. This time, I decided to let these two wild lovers be from the very beginning. Wendy, we won't be getting married. My fiancé, Lucas, stood before me, his workshop director's uniform impeccably pressed, his brows slightly furrowed. That face I once deeply loved now only makes me feel nauseous. Half a month ago, Sherry was harassed by a few hooligans at the agricultural machinery branch. The doctor said her body is weak, and a miscarriage could cost her life. I have to marry her, he said, his eyes resolute, lost in the drama of his own heroic rescue. How can she live if I don't marry her? Memories cut like knives, piercing my heart. In my previous life, when I heard this, I cried my heart out. Clutching his sleeve tightly and refusing to let go, the wedding proceeded as planned, but just 3 days later, news of Sherry's suicide by drowning spread throughout the factory. What did Lucas say back then? Wendy, she was just too fragile, don't take it to heart. 10 years, he played the role of a devoted husband for 10 years, rising step by step with the help of my family to become the new factory director, until the very end. With his own hands, he forced me, heavily pregnant, onto the struggle session stage, charged with leaking the factory's core technology to foreign countries, sentenced to death. My fingertips unconsciously traced over my flat abdomen, where his child had once grown. 7 months old, a vibrant life. He didn't even have a chance to see the world. I cried and accused him. Even if he wanted me dead, he should have let me give birth to the child first. The child is innocent. He only coldly said that this was fate. And he didn't need a child whose birth mother had stains. Wendy, are you listening? Lucas's voice pulled me back to reality, his tone tinged with impatience. I know you definitely don't want to, he sighed, as if indulging a willful child, but isn't it your responsibility that Sherry has become like this? I almost laughed out loud, a torrent of hatred churning within my chest. What responsibility do I have? I heard my own voice, cold as ice. If you hadn't suddenly returned from the countryside and exposed Sherry's true identity, how could she have made a mistake due to excessive grief and been transferred to the agricultural machinery branch, and how could she have suffered such misfortune? He furrowed his brow, his tone growing heavier. Wendy, you can't be so selfish. Selfish, I glared at him, thinking that compared to you, Lucas, using my father's power to climb up the social ladder and then sending me, who was carrying your child, to my death, what was my so-called selfishness in comparison? Moreover, the real heiress endured 18 years of hardship in the countryside, and after finally being found and brought back, it's somehow my fault. Was it my fault that Sherry drugged me and schemed to have me defiled by the local ruffian at the factory? So what are you implying? I asked softly, the corner of my mouth curling slightly. I'm curious to see just how shameless this man can be. Let's cancel the engagement, he said matter-of-factly. Sherry needs me now. After all, you are Director James's biological daughter, and the family will take care of you for life. But she can't live without me. He paused, his tone even carrying a hint of condescension. You just tell Director James later that you don't like me anymore and want to cancel the engagement. Consider it your act of atonement. So in his eyes, I was the one who needed to atone for Sherry, in my previous life. When I insisted on marrying him, was that in his eyes a greater sin, which led to the ruthless reckoning 10 years later and the light-hearted words, "This is fate, this time, I want to see where the fate of you two lovebirds will lead without my insistence." All right, I nodded, my voice unexpectedly light and cheerful. I agree, let's cancel the engagement. He was stunned, his pupils slightly contracting, clearly not expecting me to be so straightforward. Go marry Sherry, I smiled, enunciating each word clearly. I wish you both 100 years of happiness together. His expression shifted from shock to suspicion, finally settling into a secretive, revolting smugness. The disdain in my heart deepened. Did he think I was sacrificing myself out of too much love for him? Soon he would find out that I was paving the way for his descent into utter destruction. However, I changed the subject, clearly seeing the smugness on his face freeze. I'll be telling Dad the truth later. You, Lucas, proposed the annulment of the engagement, so why should I cover for you? Lucas's fake tenderness instantly vanished, replaced by an uncontrollable rage, like a dog whose tail had been stepped on. Wendy, I thought you finally had a conscience, he said, his face contorted. I didn't expect selfishness to be ingrained in your bones. Do you really want to smear me in front of Director James? I stared at him, suddenly finding it laughable. Did he think I was still the naive Wendy who was so infatuated with him that I would feel heartbroken over the slightest frown of his? Telling my dad the truth is called smearing. I chuckled lightly. You don't think doing something like this is selfish, but saying it once what you've done is selfish. Lucas, your face is thicker than the city walls. But soon, Lucas forced himself to calm down, and even a confident smile appeared on his face. Go ahead and say it if you want to. He leisurely adjusted the collar of his work uniform. As for whether Director James's attitude will turn out as you wish, we'll just have to wait and see. After speaking, he turned and left, his back as straight as a pine tree. No, my heart skipped a beat, and a chill ran down my spine. Lucas has always been cautious and cunning, placing the utmost importance on his reputation and future. Otherwise, in my previous life, he wouldn't have put on a 10-year act, waiting until he became the new factory director and his power was secure before striking me down. Someone like him would never be so indifferent to me seeking out my father, unless he already had something to rely on. I clenched my fists, my nails digging deep into my palms, the sharp pain forcing me to calm down. First, I need to find my father. But just a few steps out, I ran into the factory office messenger hurrying towards me. Comrade James, he whispered, his expression unusually grave. The factory director just received a notice. He's gone to the capital for an urgent production meeting and won't be back for 2 days. I froze, my blood seemingly congealing in an instant. In my previous life, my father had clearly cancelled all meetings and social engagements just to personally preside over my wedding and witness my happiness. But now, he was suddenly called away by a rush meeting. This change, could it be that Lucas also? But I quickly dismissed this absurd notion. Having shared the same bed for 10 years in my previous life, I knew every move he made and every subtle expression he had down to my bones. When we met just now, his demeanor, tone, and even his habitual gesture of frowning were exactly the same as they were at this time in my previous life. If he had been reborn, his reaction would not have been like this. He would have been more meticulous and better at acting. As I was lost in thought, a familiar footstep echoed from the end of the corridor. Wendy, my brother, clad in a white lab coat, looked at me with a furrowed brow, his eyes filled with concern. My mother died during a difficult childbirth when I was born, and my brother became a doctor because of that. He is the one who loves me the most in this family. Is it about Lucas? He submitted an application yesterday to bring Sherry back from the agricultural machinery branch factory. It's changed again. The course of events has once again deviated from the trajectory of my previous life. I was going to reject it outright. My brother's voice was extremely low, filled with suppressed anger, but he presented an official certificate from the clinic, stating that Sherry had a sudden acute illness there and needs immediate treatment at the main factory hospital. Ill. She didn't get sick earlier or later, but just a few days before Lucas was about to break off the engagement and marry her. I stared intently at the application, my fingers wrinkling the edges of the paper. I don't know if Sherry was sick in my previous life, but I clearly remember that she died alone in the agricultural machinery branch factory. Lucas didn't hide from me his intention to pick her up early. Brother. My voice was tight, and the unease in my heart grew stronger. This matter. It's suspicious. My brother cut me off decisively. I noticed something off about Lucas 2 months ago and advised you to reconsider the wedding date, but you, he hesitated, but I didn't need to ask. Without the benefit of a second chance, the me who was blinded by love would have stubbornly believed that my brother was overreacting. I might have even argued fiercely with him over Lucas, breaking his heart in the process. My brother took a deep breath and pulled out a copy of a lab report. the paper trembling slightly between his long, slender fingers. "This is the pregnancy test report that came in this morning," he said, his voice as cold as ice. "Sherry, 6 weeks pregnant, 6 weeks. Lucas just mentioned that she was bullied by hooligans half a month ago, but now this report clearly states that she is 6 weeks pregnant, a month and a half ago." Lucas conveniently left the factory for 3 full days under the pretext of going to a regional study session. I stared fixedly at the report, my fingertips growing cold. 2 years ago, when I was first brought back to the James family from the countryside, there was clearly no romantic or inappropriate relationship between Lucas and Sherry beyond that of siblings. They grew up together in the staff compound, their relationship so pure that even our father and brother could see it clearly. That's why when Lucas showed his ardent pursuit of me, our family felt reassured and gave their approval. But now, "This child is most likely Lucas's." My brother's voice was like a sharp knife, cruelly slicing through the bloody reality and piercing my already shattered heart. I listened as my brother analyzed the child's biological father, feeling a suffocating pain that seemed to creep over me in waves. After the tragic end of my previous life, I had already understood the special place Sherry held in Lucas's heart. Yet I never expected that during these 2 years of our sweet and loving relationship, he had already been entangled with this woman in such filthy and despicable ways. 2 years ago, Sherry drugged me just after I returned to the James family, plotting to have me defiled by a rogue, ruining my reputation and forcing me to hastily marry the man she had arranged. In that corner of the factory, the dull thud of Lucas's leather shoes kicking against a metal barrel as he kicked away the hooligan became the clearest salvation in my life. Later, everyone in the factory said that Lucas only treated Sherry as an immature younger sister, but had deep feelings for me. When I first returned to the city and couldn't keep up with the production pace, he would arrive at the workshop 2 hours early every day, simplifying complex part diagrams and operating procedures into small cards I could understand. One time during an emergency night shift repair, the few cards he hurriedly handed me still carried the warmth of his palm. He lay by the cold car bed, using the faint work light to draw for me stroke by stroke. So in my previous life, even when Lucas said he wanted to break off the engagement and marry Sherry, I naively thought it was out of pity for his sister, but in reality, he had already betrayed me. I closed my eyes, forcing down the surging hatred and disgust. When I opened my eyes again, they were clear and cold. Sherry's pregnancy and Lucas's flimsy lies were the sharpest blades to tear apart their facade of kindness, but before I could act, malicious rumors about me had already buzzed like flies through the staff compound. "Did you hear? The real daughter the James family found. Her heart is really cruel. Not only did she push Sherry to the agricultural machinery branch, but she also caused her. Isn't that right? My cousin, who is a doctor, saw it with her own eyes. She said Miss Sherry was covered in wounds, truly pitiful. TSK. As soon as the sparrow flies to the branch, it forgets who it is. What a character, Lucas. Now there's a good man. He gave up the engagement with the factory director's daughter to save someone. Now that's a real man." These malicious rumors spread like wildfire overnight, reaching every corner of the workers' compound. In the cafeteria, the usually friendly cafeteria auntie, today, let out a deliberate loud huff when I went to get food, turning her head to whisper something to the person next to her. Her eyes pierced into me like poison needles. My brother was so angry that he slammed the table during the factory meeting. "My sister is none of your business, so stop gossiping about her." But his fierce defense only fueled the rumors further. "See, Dr. James is so protective of his own sister, he's practically blind. No wonder Miss Sherry has suffered so much. Dr. James is young and impetuous, blinded by blood ties, but Chairman James might not be the same. After all, he raised his daughter for 18 years. The bond is there. Yes, when he returns from the capital and learns about these troublesome matters, he will surely feel heartbroken for Miss Sherry." When Lucas brought Sherry, who appeared weak and unable to take care of herself, into the James family's small building, the courtyard was packed with employees' family members who had rushed over to watch the commotion. Sherry's wrist was wrapped in bloody gauze, and her face was as pale as paper. She tightly clutched Lucas's arm, her eyes vacant as she mumbled to herself, "Blood, everywhere is blood, so terrifying, Comrade James." Lucas straightened his back, dressed in work clothes, looking righteous and determined. "Sherry tried to cut her wrist last night. The doctor said if we had been half an hour later, she wouldn't have made it." I stood under the porch, my mouth curling into an almost imperceptible cold smile. My brother rushed over from the factory hospital, the bloodstains from cleaning a worker's injury still on his white coat. He frowned as his gaze swept over Sherry's wrist, and suddenly, he reached out, accurately gripping her pulse point. "Brother." Sherry shrieked and struggled like a startled rabbit, but her brother's hand held her as firmly as a vice, leaving her unable to move. Her brother furrowed his brow, his expression focused and grave. Seeing this, Sherry's eyes darted, and she seized the moment. She abruptly tore off the bandage on her wrist, revealing a gruesome and horrifying wound, and blood gushed out in a rush. Blood, so much blood. My pupils suddenly contracted. This woman, who had always been delicate and would complain about being tired even from carrying a thermos, had actually gone so far as to harm herself to achieve her goal. "Brother Lucas," she swayed, teetering as she fell into Lucas's broad embrace. "I dreamed of those street hooligans. They came to catch me again." Ah, that increasingly shrill scream pierced the eardrums painfully. Several soft-hearted family members in the courtyard had already started wiping their tears, accusing James's family of being heartless. "Let Sherry go home to recuperate." Lucas seized the moment to shout, righteously, no matter what, the James family wouldn't be so cruel as to force their daughter, who they raised for 18 years, to her death, would they? This remark was like a spark landing in a vat of boiling oil, intensifying the onlookers' pointed comments. "Let her stay." At that moment, I suddenly spoke up, my voice clearly cutting through the din. My brother looked at me in surprise, his eyes filled with confusion and concern. He must have been thinking, how could this malicious impostor possibly deserve to set foot in the James family's home again? But I quietly pinched the palm of his hand, signaling him to be at ease. I am very clear about this in my heart. When I was accused of leaking factory secrets to foreign countries in my previous life, the voices of Schadenfreude are still sharply echoing in my ears. After all, she's just a wild girl from the countryside. Her thoughts aren't pure. Exactly, the Sherry girl, who the James family painstakingly raised for 18 years, is so good. Why would they want to acknowledge such a troublemaker back into the family? Now, the entire staff compound is spreading rumors that I am ruthless and have driven Sherry James to a dead end. If I refuse on the spot, wouldn't that just confirm these rumors and give them more reason to attack me and the James family? Moreover, I stared at the gruesome wound on Sherry James's wrist, my eyes flashing with a cold glint. Since she dares to use self-inflicted suffering to gain sympathy and attempt to distort the truth, then I will play along with her until the end. Only by letting her stay in the James family will those dirty tricks of hers be exposed to the light of day more quickly. "Brother," I spoke in a low voice, my tone firm, "let her stay for 2 days. When Dad returns, everything will be clear." My brother immediately understood and nodded coldly. A quick flash of triumph gleamed in Sherry's eyes, but she quickly resumed her pitiful act, shrinking closer to Lucas's embrace. I looked at her hypocritical and disgusting face and sneered coldly in my heart. "Sherry, your good days are yet to come." That evening, when Lucas came to see me, he still carried the sweet, cloying scent of the snow cream from Sherry's room, making me almost nauseous. "Wendy," his voice was hoarse, his eyes red. "These past 2 nights, I haven't been able to sleep, and every time I close my eyes, all I see is your bright smile. I should have no face to see you again, but I truly cannot live without you." I dodged his outstretched hand in disgust, my tone laced with cold sarcasm. "Director Lucas, you can say this to Sherry, and she might be moved to shed a few crocodile tears, but save it for me. I find it dirty, the child in Sherry's belly." He paused for a moment, then resumed his insincere performance. "Once she gives birth, I'll send her away immediately. I can no longer endure his shameless and disgusting face. The pent-up anger from 2 lifetimes erupts at this very moment, and I raise my hand to deliver a fierce slap. "Lucas, do you have any shame? Are you that despicable?" I glare at him, my voice trembling with fury. "When I was wholeheartedly devoted to you, you took it for granted and toyed with me like a fool. Now that I don't want you anymore, you've turned around and started wagging your tail." A clear handprint quickly forms on his pale face, and his eyes are filled with disbelief and hurt. "Even if you hadn't called off the engagement," I stared intently at his trembling eyelashes, my voice firm, "just based on your sordid affairs with Sherry, I should have cut ties with you long ago. Just to save her, you called off the engagement and married her." "Lucas, there are so many struggling female workers across the country. Why don't you just bring them all home and save each one of them?" As soon as the words left my mouth, a sharp sound of glass shattering echoed through the corridor. Sherry stood in the moonlight, with shattered glass and a puddle of water at her feet. She stared fiercely at Lucas, her lips trembling so much that she couldn't speak. Under the moonlight, Sherry's face twisted like a vengeful ghost just returned from hell. She finally realized that the so-called marriage she had schemed so hard to obtain was nothing but a self-deceiving joke. Lucas entangled with her only because he was greedy for the warmth she willingly offered. Agreeing to marry her was merely for the sake of the child in her womb that could carry on his lineage. But the moment he realized I was completely done with him, he panicked and even went so far as to humiliate himself, shamelessly turning back to beg for my forgiveness. The man she had fought for with everything, staking her reputation, turned out to be such a despicable and spineless wretch. I snorted coldly, turned my head, and walked away, leaving this chaotic space to the two of them. Turning the corner, I didn't go far but stopped by the wall. Sherry's voice was filled with resentment and venom. What's so great about her, Wendy? She's just a country bumpkin who grew up in the countryside. We've been childhood sweethearts for 18 years, but as soon as she showed up, you couldn't wait to fall for her. Now, after using me to get a child, you're running back to her. Is that it? Lucas remained as silent as a stone, letting Sherry vent her hysteria. If it weren't for my reminder half a year ago, you would have left that confidential plan in the meeting room. That could have gotten you disciplined and ruined your life. I saved you, Lucas. You owe me. Hearing this, my blood instantly froze. In my previous life, I was the one who handled this. Lucas was so terrified at the time that I ran all night, begging my father's old subordinate to quietly retrieve the proposal he had left in the conference room, saving his reputation. But in this life, under Sherry's reminder, this incident never even happened. I suddenly understood everything. So that's how it is. No wonder father was called away by a fabricated, emergency meeting, and no wonder Lucas dared to bring her back so brazenly in advance. Sherry, you vile woman, you actually reincarnated back before me. Are you trying to seize the advantage and completely steal my life? What a pity, what a pity. You died early in your previous life, and the things you knew were far too few. Even if you were given another chance, you'd still be a short-sighted fool. The argument in the room gradually subsided, and I chuckled before turning around and heading back to my bedroom. The next morning, as soon as I stepped out of my room, I heard the sobs coming from Sherry's room, like an annoying mosquito. By evening, she had accidentally spilled a basin of water in the hallway, soaking her nightgown. Sister, she stood at my door, shivering. My clothes are all wet. Could you lend me something to change into? I casually tossed her a dress from the wardrobe. As she reached for the clothes, she suddenly stumbled, her eyes fixed on the thermos on the table. A cold smile formed in my heart. As expected, she's here. You seem quite frightened. How about some hot water to calm your nerves? I deliberately handed her the enamel cup before she could speak. Her hand trembled uncontrollably as she reached for the enamel cup, her little finger's nail barely skimming the surface of the water. The same old cheap tricks. 2 years ago, she drugged me, and now, to frame me, she's willing to drug herself. Sherry, you've really improved. The moment the enamel cup was brought to her lips, I caught a glimmer of triumph in her eyes, as if her scheme had succeeded. How laughable. She thought she was meticulously plotting, yet she didn't realize I had already seen through her. She's nothing more than a clown struggling in her final moments. I have repeatedly confirmed with my brother that she is indeed pregnant. This miscarriage frame-up drama, of course, I will not stop. After all, this illegitimate child is Lucas's own flesh and blood. When I perished together with Lucas in my previous life, the innocent fetus in my womb also turned to ashes with me. That child didn't even get a chance to see the sunlight of this world. How could someone like Lucas, who killed his own flesh and blood, deserve to have children? And I really want to see it, when he discovers that Sherry, the woman who loved him deeply, clung to him and forced him into marriage only because of that child, and now has killed that illegitimate child herself to frame me. What magnificent expressions would appear on his face. Ah! A blood-curdling scream shattered the tranquil night. Sherry suddenly clutched her stomach, crumpling to the ground as blood gushed rapidly from between her legs. At that moment, a booming voice, filled with both anxiety and joy, came from downstairs. Wendy, Dad has finally made it back. Absolutely no delay in sending my precious daughter off in grand style. Child, my child. Sherry trembled violently, her blood-stained hand gripping my trouser leg tightly. Sister, do you hate me so much? Before I could speak, my father rushed up, covered in dust. Behind him, Lucas's face turned as pale as paper upon seeing the pool of blood on the ground. The man staggered back half a step, his eyes filled with disbelief and terror. his throat moving up and down but unable to utter a word. It seems that the male lead in this miscarriage drama was truly kept in the dark and had no idea at all, Sherry continued with great emotion, as if clutching the last lifeline. She struggled to rush towards her father who had just come upstairs. Dad, I just wanted to ask my sister for forgiveness, not to be angry with me anymore. But she cried heart-wrenchingly. Trembling as she raised the enamel cup I had given her, she actually drugged the water she gave me, just like how I once foolishly did to her 2 years ago. Lucas rushed forward in a single stride, carefully cradling her in his arms. When he looked up at me, his bloodshot eyes were filled with anger and disappointment. Wendy, you knew Sherry was weak, yet you still cruelly caused her to miscarry. Lucas, go. Sherry leaned weakly against him, her voice barely a whisper. Don't blame my sister, it's all my fault, I deserve it. 2 years ago, I was bewitched and believed the slanders, drugging my sister and nearly causing a grave mistake. Now that my sister has repaid everything, let's just call it even. She struggled to sit up from Lucas's embrace and, facing her father's astonished expression, kowtowed heavily. Dad, I know I'm not James's biological child. I don't expect to receive the same love as my sister. I only beg you to forgive the mistakes I made out of youthful ignorance. Her father's gaze first fell upon the shocking bloodstains scattered across the floor, his brow furrowed, then, his sharp eyes, like a falcon's, quickly swept over Sherry's pale face and Lucas's anxious expression, finally settling on my calm demeanor, with a hint of inquiry and an undetectable trace of concern. You weren't married at the agricultural machinery branch. So where did this child come from? Her father asked with an air of unchallengeable authority. And as for Wendy, what reason could she possibly have to target your unborn child? Sherry's sobs abruptly stopped, as if deeply wounded by her father's coldness and suspicion. Lucas immediately straightened his back and spoke with righteous indignation. Report to the director. Sherry, when she was at the agricultural machinery branch, was unfortunately harassed by a few local hooligans. She spent 2 years in the countryside, lacking food and clothing, and her body became too weak. This miscarriage, the doctor said it could be life-threatening. I was really worried that something might happen to Sherry, so I took the initiative to bring her back to recuperate. But Wendy probably misunderstood something. I stared at their clasped hands, a cold smile in my heart. What a perfect match made in heaven. One uses the abortion of her illegitimate child as a bargaining chip, acting with tears streaming down her face. The other hides behind the excuse of responsibility and duty, portraying himself as a hero bearing humiliation and hardship. Their duet not only solidifies my jealous and vicious reputation but also drapes Lucas's annulment and remarriage in a cloak of moral righteousness, while conveniently garnering sympathy for Sherry's past exile to evoke my father's guilt and pity. What a well-calculated plan. As expected, their father's expression subtly changed after hearing their complaints. Seeing her father's expression soften, Sherry's tears immediately began to flow like broken pearls, each drop aimed to strike his heart and make him relent. Dad, do you remember, when I was 10, I had a high fever and almost didn't make it? Her voice carried a deep sense of grievance and dependence. You stayed by my side for 3 days and nights, you said. Even if it meant bringing in the best doctors from the entire province, you would cure me. Lucas also appropriately reddened his eyes, his voice choked. Director James, Sherry always said that you raised her personally and are the closest person to her in this world. Every word they spoke was a gamble. They were betting on the father's sense of loyalty and justice. After raising Sherry for 18 years, even without blood ties, there must be deep affection. Unfortunately, they are destined to be disappointed today. I stood quietly to the side, letting out a silent sneer. I have enough confidence in my father, not only because of our previous life together, but also because he still wanted to clear my name when I was caught leaking classified evidence abroad, but more importantly, because of that earth-shattering secret about her true identity that Sherry, the imposter, remains completely unaware of. Shut up, all of you, Father suddenly roared, his voice booming like a bell. He swiftly shielded me behind him, the collar of his suit slightly rising and falling with his anger. My daughter would never do something so despicable, he said, glaring at Sherry who was trembling in fear. His eyes carried undisguised disgust and disdain. Wendy is the blood of the James family. The kind of shameless things you, a fake, would do, she would never stoop to, and she will never do. We exchanged a glance, both seeing the understanding and trust in each other's eyes. Sherry clearly realized that there was no chance of dragging me down with her, but she still seemed to cling to an unrealistic hope. thinking that she could at least gain her father's forgiveness. Her face turned pale, and she trembled as she clutched at her father's trouser leg, pleading desperately, "Dad, Dad, when I was brought here, I was just a baby in swaddling clothes. I knew nothing. I really am innocent." She suddenly turned to me again, her face tear-streaked like pear blossoms. "Sister, it's not my fault that you were left out in the cold. I swear, I would be willing to be your ox or horse in this life and the next to atone for my sins. Please, forgive me, won't you?" At that moment, Gu walked over with a heavy medical kit, his face expressionless. He didn't even glance at the two people on the ground, walking straight to his father. "Dad, I've already checked the pulse. Sherry is 1.5 months pregnant, and it's Lucas's child." Sherry's hand, which had been tightly gripping her father's trouser leg, instantly fell limply to her side. Her father's forehead veins bulged as he suddenly raised his foot and kicked over the side table next to him. "Well, very well, when you took Wendy's identity, you knew nothing, but now, when you took Wendy's man, was that not your own initiative?" He pointed directly at Sherry, each word seemingly squeezed from between his teeth. 20 years ago, when your heartless biological mother swapped the children, she should have foreseen this outcome. Sherry felt as if struck by 5 thunderbolts. "What? Swapped? No, wasn't it just a mix-up? A mix-up? It was a deliberate switch." The father's voice was filled with fury and regret. "I trusted your biological mother to care for my pregnant wife. But she took advantage of my wife's difficult labor to replace my cherished daughter with her own illegitimate child." Sherry's face instantly drained of all color. "You said you had that high fever when you were 10, do you remember what I said next? I had already lost your mother, and I couldn't lose you too. I thought you were her flesh and blood." Lucas's eyes darted between me and Sherry, his arm around her stiffening. My brother let out a cold laugh and added, seizing the moment, "Oh. And let me tell you something else, Sherry, your biological father also surnamed James, so you didn't change your surname. It's not that we were lenient with you, it's just what you were originally called." Sherry trembled all over and suddenly screamed like a madwoman. "No, it's impossible, you're lying to me," Mom clearly said. "Your mother didn't want you to know the truth even until her death." Her father interrupted her. "I didn't reveal it out of consideration for 18 years of affection, yet I ended up raising a white-eyed wolf, like father, like son, like mother, like daughter. A rat's child knows how to dig holes." Her father looked at her with disgust. "Your mother could swap babies, and you could drug my daughter." Sent to the agricultural machinery branch for 2 years of reflection, and what came out of it was seducing her fiancé, then turning around to frame her. The James family raised you for 18 years, yet it couldn't wash away the filth in your bones. Lucas's face was ashen, but he still tried to maintain his last shred of dignity, wanting to speak in his defense. "Director James, this matter, Lucas," his father's gaze was filled with the heartache of disappointment, as if seeing a piece of unpolished steel. "I truly misjudged you. Back then, when you were innovating in the workshop. You exceeded production targets for 3 consecutive months. I thought you were a promising talent, yet now you're so infatuated with such a person. Lucas, you can't even control your own belt. How can you deserve to be an advanced producer?" Lucas's face turned from pale to white, then to a lifeless gray. Suddenly, he fell to his knees and knocked his head heavily on the ground several times. "Director, I was momentarily foolish. That night, I was drugged. And I never expected that just that one time would result in her being pregnant." The father merely looked at him coldly. The older brother picked up the medical kit and nodded his chin towards the two on the ground. "I don't care about either of you. If you need treatment, go to the factory hospital. Don't sully my sister's eyes." The lights in the factory's grand auditorium were painfully bright. I stood to the side of the stage, my gaze sweeping over the sea of employees below. Lucas sat in the most prominent seat in the 3rd row, his work uniform impeccably pressed, yet unable to hide the despair and panic in his eyes. As for Sherry, the frail woman Lucas claimed would die from a miscarriage, she was still safely tucked away in a corner. "Comrades," father's voice echoed throughout the entire venue, "today's all-staff meeting is to clarify some widely circulated and seriously inaccurate rumors within our factory." The venue fell instantly silent, so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. I took a deep breath and pulled out the prepared documents from the file bag. "These are Comrade Sherry's pregnancy check records from the health clinic at the agricultural machinery branch factory." I raised the documents, ensuring everyone could see the official seal and date. 6 weeks pregnant, with the check date being half a month ago. There was an immediate uproar from the audience, and according to Comrade Lucas, Sherry was harassed by hooligans a month ago. I deliberately paused. The timing doesn't match. Lucas suddenly stood up, his face turning red. Wendy, you're infringing on personal privacy. Comrade Lucas, my father spoke coldly. Please sit down, watch your words and actions. Lucas's face turned from red to pale, and he eventually slumped back into his seat. I continued to state the facts in a clear and calm voice. What's even more coincidental is that a month and a half ago, Comrade Lucas happened to go study in the region for 3 days. I pulled out the second document from the file bag. This is his travel order and train ticket stub, with the destination being the county where the agricultural machinery branch factory is located. The venue erupted into chaos, with exclamations rising like a tidal wave. I clearly saw several female worker representatives from the front row exchanging contemptuous and disgusted glances, casting disdainful looks at Lucas and Sherry. Therefore, Comrade Sherry is carrying the child of Comrade Lucas, and the two fabricated the story of her being harassed by hooligans to gain sympathy and return to the main factory. My voice was not loud, but it brought the entire venue to silence once again. They had already committed serious disciplinary issues during our engagement period, and possibly even earlier. Sherry made a desperate attempt. You're lying. It was those hooligans. Enough, father interrupted sharply. Comrades from the Public Security Bureau have already investigated your agricultural machinery branch and the nearby villages. No major public order incidents occurred during that period. This lie ends here. Sherry was silenced like a chicken with its neck grabbed. Now, I announced the disciplinary decision regarding Comrade Lucas. Father took out a document with a red seal. After careful consideration and approval from the higher authorities, Comrade Lucas's position as workshop director and his title as an advanced producer are hereby revoked. He is demoted to an ordinary worker and will be transferred to the new factory in the northwest Gobi Desert immediately. To observe his future performance, Lucas's face was ashen, and his shoulders trembled slightly beneath his work clothes. He closed his eyes abruptly, as if trying to block out the voice that had just sealed his fate. Sherry, on the other hand, slumped like a pile of mud in the corner, her eyes vacant, mumbling something unintelligible. She suddenly turned to Lucas, her eyes filled with hope. Lucas go, we. Lucas avoided her gaze as if it were a plague. I slowly descended from the podium, walking up to Lucas under the watchful eyes of everyone. Lucas, you betrayed me and the James family for such a person, ruining your bright future, I said softly, ensuring only he could hear. Was it worth it? His lips trembled, but no words came out. I turned and walked towards Sherry, the hatred in her eyes almost palpable. Wendy, she hissed through gritted teeth, are you satisfied now? Not at all. I smiled and shook my head. This is just the beginning. Sherry, your show is yet to come. After the meeting, I timed it perfectly and deliberately, bumped into Lucas, who was in a daze, in the corridor of the factory hospital. Comrade Lee, coming for a follow-up? I asked with feigned concern. He looked at me warily. Wendy, what are you up to now? I simply pulled out another copy of a lab report and handed it to him. Don't be nervous. I just want you to take a look at this. The paper clearly recorded the residual drug components in Sherry's body, aconitine. This poisonous weed only grows near the ravine by the agricultural machinery branch. Do you think she or I would be more likely to get it? Impossible. Lucas's voice was hoarse. How could she be so heartless? I enjoyed the look of his world crumbling as I pulled out the last sheet of paper from the file. This week, Dad sent someone to investigate where she was sent to labor. I unfolded the investigation report. At least 7 ruffians have confessed to having relations with her in the 2 days after you left. Comrade Lee, you think it was just a coincidence that she got pregnant with your child on the first try? She worked much harder than you think to be able to return smoothly and climb onto your high branch. I leaned close to his ear. Now, guess why she could be so ruthless as to abort her own child? Lucas suddenly grabbed my arm, his nails almost digging into my flesh. You're lying. You must be lying. His once ambitious and spirited eyes now held only madness and despair, and a hint of overwhelming hatred from being deceived. I'm sure Sherry's life is not going to be easy from now on. What irony. Lucas, a man who prided himself on his intelligence and cunning, was fooled by the same woman in 2 lifetimes. In his previous life, he destroyed me for the illegitimate child in that woman's belly. In this life, he destroyed himself. The James family wouldn't sully their hands, but Lucas's sordid deeds were already well known. He had just arrived at the Gobi Desert in the northwest when he was assigned to dig foundations. Enduring wind and sun exposure, once a model worker in the factory, he was now worse off than even ordinary laborers, often having his work points deducted by the foreman. The factory's status continued to decline, and within half a year, he went from being a technical backbone to a mere odd-job worker cooking and boiling water in a shed. Half a year later, I learned from my brother about the final fates of those two individuals. That afternoon, my brother tossed the Workers' Daily onto the coffee table. In an inconspicuous corner of the Society News section was a headline: "A brutal murder occurs at a construction site. Lucas wants to divorce Sherry." My brother handed me an apple freshly washed, but Sherry is threatening him with evidence of domestic abuse. Refusing to agree, the two of them dragged each other through mutual torment in the Gobi Desert for a year. Lucas couldn't take it anymore and beat her to death with a shovel. What's even worse is that he buried the body in a sandpile at the construction site, trying to destroy the evidence. I took a bite of the sweet apple, and then, death sentence, he confessed quickly after being caught, saying he'd rather be shot than see that face again or stay in that hellhole. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting the brief report on the newspaper into a blurred patchwork of light and shadow. What a pity, I didn't get to see it with my own eyes. What's the pity? Don't dirty your eyes with it. Brother reached out and ruffled my hair, the warm sunlight enveloping me and dispelling the last trace of gloom. My new beginning was just beginning. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.